All right, let's move on to tonight's game. The one that we're obviously focused on is Manchester United against Paris Saint-Germain. Roma and Porto also go at it at 8 o'clock this evening. They are 8 o'clock kickoffs this evening in the round of 16. Daniel Harris and Philippe Auclair are with us. Daniel, I might start with you. The level of expectation that Manchester United had and their fans had when the draw was made wouldn't have been that it was going to be in any way straightforward or easy, and maybe there would have been very low levels of confidence. The transformative nature of what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has done is becoming apparent by the fact that Man United fans can realistically hope that there is a good chance they can go through over these two legs.
Yeah, United, I guess, are under a bit of pressure now. Partly they're under pressure because they're playing quite well, and partly they're under pressure because PSG have got players missing. I think even when the draw is made, when you look at the better teams, the favourites, PSG are the ones that you think, well, there's a chance against them because they don't do that well in these kind of games because they're not tested, perhaps because they're not tested enough in the French league, perhaps because they're not dealing that well with the pressure of the Champions League because the players are getting used to it, who knows. But United are now under a bit of pressure, but it's for Ole Solskjaer and the players to turn that into some kind of energy and confidence.
Yeah, and I guess they should do. What do you think is going to happen? How will they approach this game tonight? What level of nervousness will there be, and how aggressive will they be from the get-go?
I think that the way that English teams often progress when they're drawn against sides like PSG is the way that it often works for them is that they're able to do something in the first half an hour, the first half of the tie, to get a lead. Doesn't always work like that, but if I was Ole Solskjaer, that's what I'd be looking at United to do. I'd want a fast start on the front foot, while PSG try and play themselves into the game, because once PSG start to take over in midfield, and PSG have a kind of midfield that is able to do that to United, United's midfield isn't really good enough to control the game, to control possession against a proper team. So with the way that the English clubs often compensate for what is a fairly common deficiency is by blowing the opponents away with power and pace and energy in the first half an hour or so. So that's what I'd expect United to do. I'd expect them to try and look to get at PSG in wide areas, because I think that's where there is a potential weakness, and look to get bodies into the box early. And then if that doesn't happen, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw PSG start to dictate the middle of the pitch and United look to catch them on the counter and through moments rather than through dominating the game.
Yeah, Philippe, it's a fair point that Daniel makes about the way that PSG have been set up in recent seasons, but Thomas Tuchel has tried to change things just a little bit and to make them at least capable of playing on the counter-attack. Was that designed specifically for matches like tonight?
Well, you would think so, but it must be said that any judgment that you make about what Thomas Tuchel has done with PSG is going to be slightly changed because of the circumstances. And the thing is that you're not going to see anyway the PSG tonight that you would have expected to see normally, because so many of the absolutely crucial players are missing out. Some have just got back in the team, like Verratti, who is absolutely essential. But you know, as I do, that Thomas Meunier is not in the team. Edinson Cavani has just got himself injured. And Neymar, of course, is absent for quite a long time. So, yes, they're a team which is very, very quick on the counter. They are a team which are able to cause problems to any defence in normal circumstances. But at the moment, you're really wondering whether Tuchel will ask his players to try and do damage limitation rather than do the damage themselves. And people are very, very worried, I must say, in Paris.
Okay, that's interesting. Because when the draw was made, I would have assumed there was a fair bit of confidence in Paris as well. So what is it specifically about this Manchester United team that's worrying them, though? Philippe?
Yes, hello, sorry, I lost you for a second.
Sorry, yeah. What is it about this Manchester United team that's worrying Paris Saint-Germain? Because notwithstanding the fact that they have some injuries themselves, they should still have the confidence and swagger from...
No, the confidence and the swagger haven't been there of late, and not just because of the injuries. There was the game against Lyon, which they lost 2-1. There was a very difficult game in the French Cup against the third-tier team, Villefranche, which they won 3-0 in the end, but only after extra time and without proving anything. There was an absolutely appalling game. I can tell you, absolutely appalling game against Bordeaux in the last round of the French league, which they won 1-0, and which is when Edinson Cavani injured himself. The performances haven't been very good at all. And you might say that maybe they shouldn't worry too much about that, because it is, I think, too often we exaggerate the impact of domestic form on Champions League form, and to be proved very often that there's not much of an influence on one or the other. But the swagger that they had certainly earlier in the season is not there anymore. And you have to recognize that it is when a player is not there that you realize how good and how influential he is. And certainly since Neymar's injury, they haven't been the same side. So that swagger, the incredible, dominance that they have over French football, the decent performances they had in the Champions League, you can pretty much forget about them now. I'm not saying that they're coming to Manchester to get a severe beating, because there's still an awful lot of talent in that team. Don't forget Angel Di Maria, for example, who is the player that Thomas Tuchel has called on the most this season, quite incredibly. And of course, the fantastic Kylian Mbappe up front, best goal scorer in Liga. But they are coming with a diminished team and with doubt in the minds of some of the players, and certainly in most of the supporters.
Yeah, it really says something when you speak about the worry that can be instilled in this squad, despite the fact that they spent whatever it is, €400 million on actually bumping up the squad. It seems that they haven't left themselves with too much depth, Philippe.
No, the thing, it's very difficult to have any fair judgment over that particular team and particular club at the moment. The investment has been huge, as you've said, but the investment has not necessarily been where it was needed the most. You will find, I think, this evening that one of the major areas of concern for Paris is their midfield. And the fact that you've got this Italian playmaker, Regista, Massimo Verratti, who has only just come back to play in the team, has only got about an hour of football in his legs, will be associated with somebody who is a central defender, Marquinhos, in centre of midfield. And it's a team that is at the moment completely unbalanced. And it will be even more unbalanced because of the absence of Thomas Meunier. I know I'm repeating myself, but this is the Paris Saint-Germain that you'll have to contend with tonight. And it's going to be a real proof of whether Tuchel is as good a manager as people say he is, because he's going to have to invent, a bit like, what, if I take an example in England, what Mauricio Pochettino has had to do when he's discovered that Harry Kane and Dele Alli were not available any longer. He's managed to change things around with success, and we're going to have exactly the same situation tonight with Thomas Tuchel and PSG.
Did want to ask about who you think is going to play tonight for Manchester United, Daniel. The performance at the weekend had the bang of the Ferguson era in that it was a routine 3-0 away from home victory, never really felt in doubt. They were clearly the better side. It was the inevitability of that result that was like, ooh, this is new and interesting, because it's been a while since we've seen Man United just be able to, no matter what the opposition is in the Premier League, perform that way. So was that team likely to be an indicator of who isn't playing tonight, given that certain players started who maybe won't start tonight?
It's not necessarily an indicator, but one thing that seems very clear that Solskjaer has done is he's got his first 11 more or less sorted in a way that Mourinho and Van Gaal never did in years. So the front three will be Rashford, Martial and Lingard. And I think that's been crucial to what United have done. Players who can run fast, who are inventive, who are hard to pin down. Then the midfield will be the same midfield that he went with against Fulham. And actually, I think he learned from the game against Burnley that he doesn't have any real depth in midfield. So if he's going to make changes, it's quite hard to do it in that area of the pitch. So that will be Matic, Herrera and Pogba. And the only real discussion that he has is who's going to play centre-back next to Lindelof. I think that if Smalling had had more games, it would definitely be him. But because he's only had that one game against Fulham, it's actually, you can make a case for all of them. Jones has played the most under Solskjaer, so perhaps it will be him. Bailly has more upside than the other two, but also more downside than the other two. And he froze against Sevilla last season and also against Manchester City last season. So I don't know who he's going to play at centre-back, but I think the rest of the team picks itself. And what I think United have got, what's really important for United is in the way that you were just asking Philippe about the absence of Neymar, the thing about where if PSG could strengthen all they like, they could spend hundreds of millions of pounds on second-string players, and they would still miss Neymar. Because if you have players of that quality, the reason they are players of that quality is because there's no one else who can compare to them. And that's the case with Neymar. And it's not just even Neymar, it's that Neymar and Mbappe are there. Because if you look at PSG's team, obviously Di Maria is a good player. Obviously Draxler's a good player. But the one you'd be thinking you need to stop is Mbappe. And so if you've got Mbappe, you could say to Matic and Herrera, you two need to shuffle the cross a bit and deal with this bloke. Whereas if you've got Neymar on the other side, you end up being like basically Bobby Charlton trying to brush his hair, where you're trying to cover too much area with too little, and there's nothing you can do about that. But if the danger man, the outstanding elite talent, is only one player, then you're in a much better position to try and do something about that. And one thing we've seen from Solskjaer is he alters what he does, the tactics that he uses, the personnel, depending on what the opposition have. So I'm sure there will be a defensive plan to try and counter PSG, but I think certainly in the first half an hour, particularly, the aim will be to go forward and to try and get a lead.
Well, what's your take on Angel Di Maria, Daniel, from a Manchester United perspective? Because it seems to me that he is a human being who's more suited to, say, the Parisian lifestyle, to the lifestyle of being a Paris Saint-Germain footballer, aka not having to try too hard every single week domestically. Is that too lazy a thing to say about Di Maria?
Yeah, I think so. Di Maria is an elite level player who's done it at Real Madrid, who's turned up and performed every week at Real Madrid, who's had to sacrifice a ridiculous amount and work ridiculously hard to get to where he is. I think there's a germ of truth in what you're saying, that he didn't want to be at United. He ended up at United because he didn't really have options. Madrid wanted rid of him because they wanted to buy James, and there weren't that many other clubs who could afford his transfer fee and his wages. But even then, he wouldn't be the first person that's gone to a club because they've had to go there, turned up at the club and thought, actually, this is pretty good. The problem is that he was at United at the wrong time. He was at United when Van Gaal was the manager, and Van Gaal, basically, United played Leicester, and they played half an hour of some of the best football I've seen in the post-Ferguson era. Then Raphael got sent, unfortunately, got sent off, and United collapsed and ended up getting beaten. And Van Gaal was spooked, and never again did he pick an attacking team. So after that, he was trying to sneak Di Maria into the team up front, in the same way he'd done in the World Cup with Robben. Just right, well, you can run fast, we'll defend deep and in numbers, and then we'll whack the ball up to you and you'll run after it. And Di Maria's not that kind of player. At his best, Di Maria is almost two players in one, because he's so fit and so fast. He was playing for Madrid on the left side of a three in midfield, but then he was so fit that he was also playing on the left wing at the same time. And there are very few players in world football that are able to do that. And Di Maria is an interesting and probably unique player. The problem was that Van Gaal wasn't prepared to use that. And there was a story about a row at training where in the end Di Maria said, well, why did you sign me? And that is a fair question. Even though Di Maria didn't want to be there, even though he could have tried harder when he was at United to make it work, United was deliberately set up to make it not possible for him to make it work. So I would say that there was wrong on both sides, but in the main, I'll blame Van Gaal for what happened with Di Maria, not Di Maria.
Yeah, like Van Gaal is obviously a bit of a hard ass, and like it's obviously, the point I put to you is obviously way too harsh a criticism to put of Angel Di Maria, and I'd be interested to get your take on that, Philippe, because you look, if you want to compare two managers at the opposite ends of the spectrum, I think you could definitely put Van Gaal at one side of things and then Thomas Tuchel at the other side of things because of the way he deals with his players. And I think there's probably a comparison between Tuchel and Solskjaer in this respect as well. Like reading Simon Cooper's piece on ESPN, he says that he hugs Neymar and that when the player isn't around, I write him texts, he says, to tell him that I still believe in him and that I'm sad he isn't here. He's a man quite in touch with his emotions, isn't he, Philippe?
Yes, he is. Sometimes a little bit too much. Has happened recently in a game where he was actually sent to the stands for remonstrating a little bit too heavily. Certainly a very different character from Unai Emery, for example. And one of the things is that he's, apparently been able to have a very positive influence on Neymar. The one thing I've heard a lot actually over the last few weeks is how Neymar is having a completely different attitude towards his job as a footballer, and he sometimes took it a bit as between the job and a vacation at times. It seems he has changed a lot, and also the way that Di Maria has excelled this season with Tuchel speaks a lot about his man management qualities, and something which is reflected in the quality of the performances of the Argentinian player that we've seen this season. And clearly he's got something here happening with this squad, which is, I mean, it's almost legendary how difficult it is to manage it because of the strong personalities in the dressing room and the fact that those personalities have managed to survive over a long period of time, seeing a number of managers coming and going. And it's a bit of a poison chalice for that. But yes, there is definitely, I mean, one of the most impressive, or more impressive, I would say, things that is brought to the club is certainly a better atmosphere, a better relationship with the players, which has shown for a while. But again, I'm sorry to come back to that, but which has shown for a while, but until the avalanche of misfortune that has come their way in the recent past. And also this other thing, which is the question mark which everybody asks every time PSG attains this stage in the Champions League. It is whether the Ligue 1, which is so weak, I'm sorry to say that, does not really give you the best terrain on which to prepare for clashes like the one tonight, and that you will find out exactly how good a job he's done tonight. He knows it, but unfortunately is going to this job with one hand tied behind his back.
Yeah, I think everybody probably understands that a little bit. Or certainly you would hope that the hierarchy of the club will when it comes to their decision making at the end of the season. The other big story that's been going on at Paris Saint-Germain is this potential return to football. We've heard mooted about Arsene Wenger. Yeah. Is there any truth in this? What do you think is going to happen here?
It's the sea snake which you keep seeing bobbing above the waves in PSG's choppy waters, if you excuse the metaphor. What is certain is that the position of the current sports director, Antero and Henrique, the man who brought Choupo-Moting to PSG, which is quite something, is in doubt, to say the least. His position has been weakened. And that because of that, obviously, and because also of information or perhaps suggestions which have been put out by some people close to Arsene Wenger, let's put it that way, the old story that Wenger would actually become the new sports director of PSG has regained some strength. In fairness, there is nothing at the moment which indicates that it will happen in the near future. I'm not saying it's never going to happen because the club has always been quite close to Wenger. Even though, I must say, imagine Arsene Wenger, do you remember what he said about a sporting director at Arsenal accepting such a job? And also, after what he said about financial doping, joining Paris Saint-Germain. That would be quite ironic, I think.
Yeah. He's a man who appreciates irony, though, Wenger, at least.
Yes. He's got actually a very large flat very close to the Parc des Princes.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's all going to work out. Philippe, great stuff. There's one last question I had for you, Daniel, and it was about the performance of Ander Herrera. So much has been made of the improvement in the form of the strikers and the way that they're playing with a smile on their face and all that stuff that you want to do, and if you are going to be successful, you kind of need to enjoy your job. It looks to me like Ander Herrera is starting to enjoy his job and perhaps begin to fulfil his potential.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with him is he's another player. I mean, well, the same as every player who's been at United the last few years, who was at United at the wrong time. Because when he was at Bilbao, he was number 10. And when he came to England, he realised that he wasn't going to get enough goals to play number 10 in a good team. So he ended up, partly because of that, and partly because he was badly managed, being turned into basically a snide mouser, like a guy who just runs about, throws himself around, kicks people, and gets in the way. Matt, if there's a good team on if the opposition have a good player, well, you put Herrera on him because it's better to take Herrera out of the game along with the other good player that the opposition have. But he's actually got a lot more to his game than that. He sees the game really well. He's a good passer. He can get into the box. He can score. And we've seen that at various passages of play when managers have had faith in him. So although he's not of the standard of the best United midfield players, he has quite a lot of attributes as a general. And we're seeing that now, where he's got a really good understanding of the game so that when he wins the ball deep, he looks to play a forward pass and he looks to play it quickly. And that's something that Matic does a lot less of. So the combination of him, Pogba, and those of Herrera, Pogba, and Matic, although it's lacking in quality of what you need to be able to control the game at the top level, the combination of qualities that those players have is quite useful. And Herrera for sure is seeing what you'd expect to see in any player. When they know the manager has confidence in them and they know they're going to play in all the games, you start to see an improvement in what they do in those games. And he's playing really well at the moment.
I think that actually, you know, if you were to have Matic at his very best for Chelsea and say him and Pogba combined with another person wasn't good enough to control a game in midfield, everybody would laugh at you. I think that it's actually reached a point maybe where we need to revisit what Matic could be if he was playing for a sustained period of time under a manager who gave him some confidence. Like, there's a possibility he's not completely shot, right?
No, I don't think Matic is shot, but he's not someone I ever thought was a great player in the first place. The problem with Matic for me is that if you play in his position, you need to do one of two things. You either need to be someone like Michael Carrick, who can pass the ball early, quickly, over short and long distances off either foot and keep the game moving. He can't do that. Or you've got to be someone like Fernandinho, who can speed the game up and cover a lot of ground, and he doesn't do that either. And the thing about a player like Pogba is Pogba's obviously an amazing talent and a generational talent, but he's not a player who necessarily is going to give you control in a game. He's quite similar to Steven Gerrard in that aspect. He's a player who's going to settle games with moments of brilliance, but he's not necessarily going to help you control them. And I would say that if I was looking at the United team and thinking in the summer, where would you want to strengthen this team to make it better? The first thing that I would be looking to do probably is to bring in a centre-back, but then after that I'd be looking for at least one midfield player. And that midfield player for me would be a replacement for Matic or a replacement for Herrera. And if I bought a replacement for Herrera, I'd put Herrera in Matic's position, because Herrera has that ability to get around the pitch, and he's just also a much better passer than Matic. Matic has been better under Solskjaer in that he's passing the ball forward and he's moving more, but I don't think we're ever going to see him be the standard of player that you would need to be able to control the game against a proper team.
All right, good stuff, Daniel. Enjoy the game tonight. Thanks a million.
See you again, guys.
Daniel Harris giving us some thoughts ahead of Man United and Paris Saint-Germain, which obviously kicks off at 8 o'clock tonight, and you'll hear live updates across the course of the show on News Talk this evening from 7 o'clock with Joe and the lads. Now, go on.
There was just one, in case anybody thought, is Thomas Tuchel an absolute nutcase? Well, he is a nutcase, according to that piece that I mentioned there by Simon Cooper in ESPN. Apparently, so Tuchel, you can kind of tell by him on the sideline, he's an extremely thin man. He's 45 years old, and he's so crazy that he once boasted of having once spent 4 weeks in Italy without touching either pasta or pizza. The real nutcase are Thomas Tuchel.
That's just joylessness.
Joylessness. He's he's obviously kind of implemented this. Like, it's really weird that the French sporting culture, isn't it? I thought it was just a French rugby culture. But he says the first time his PSG side took the bus to an away game, Marco Verratti requested a Coca-Cola. Horror of horrors, he discovered that Tuchel had banned all soft drinks and sandwiches. Verratti quickly got the message. But this is only a couple of years ago. Yeah. Or this is like this year. Yeah. This is
no Coke.
No Coca-Cola, no sandwiches for a professional football player. Shock horror.
All right.